Good evening. It's Monday, July 31st, 2023. Welcome to episode 30 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Joining me tonight is Julia and Aaron from TheCannyCouple homestead. They are first-generation homesteaders who have been sharing their journey with folks on frugality tips and becoming debt-free. And I thought I'd have them on tonight to chat about some of the things that they've learned along the way. So welcome, you two.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, awesome. And I want to apologize for anybody that may have been thinking that we were going on live yesterday. That was a scheduling error on my part. So anybody that was thinking that we were going to be on last night, that did not happen. And that was my bad. So yeah, well, welcome again, you guys. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, when did you decide to start homesteading, as you guys are first generation homesteaders? So when did you start?
Yeah, for us, it was probably about 7 years ago now that we started dabbling in it, you can say. Before that, we didn't have any inclination of going that way. It was just more of, from the frugality standpoint, every time we kept looking into more ways to be more frugal, homesteading interconnected with it. So we were like, okay, let's look into this. And it honestly started out, sort of the wrong way for us from a permacultural perspective. It was basically, oh, we need to plant trees from a food perspective. And it was, okay, I'm planting hundreds of trees, not looking at it from the zone perspective. And then, now after we've learned more, we're like, okay, it'd been nice if we'd planned this out a little bit better from the zone perspective.
Yeah. I can say the same thing, man. Don't feel like you're alone in that. There's so much we don't know when we enter into this a lot of times, and we have to learn along the way. And that's one of the things that I've really learned over the years is just, it would really, I think, benefit people if they had somebody come out and do an assessment of their property from a permaculture standpoint, somebody who's good and understands what they're looking at, because it can save you thousands of dollars and time and effort, in the long run. So that's something I wish I probably would have done, but I didn't even know about permaculture at the time. Yeah. Right. So how did you get turned on to permaculture?
Through research, as we started jumping more into homesteading, because when we started planting trees, it wasn't just frugality, it was also being less dependent on outside sources. It was more the prepping nature of our lifestyle. I'm naturally a food prepper. Like, that is something that I've always been this way. Aaron is a prepper on the other spectrum in terms of
communication, ham radio.
We kind of brought it together to kind of, create something that really worked for us. But food dependencies on outside sources was a real big problem for us. So as we've grown more and we wanted to make our homestead grow more, we started doing research. And actually, this really started happening when we had our little one.
Yeah.
We were up, we were on a really tight schedule for her. We had to be up every 3 hours doing feedings because she was born a little early. We had a very tight schedule every 3 hours. So in the middle of the night, we had to get up to feed her, because we would both get up and do it together, because that's how we look at everything. We're a team, we're a unit. We would watch a video. We would learn how to do something new.
Yeah.
So we would learn about permaculture. We would learn about seed starting. We would learn all of these different things that were going to make us less dependent on the sources around us, outside of us. And I think that's really when our homesteading switch flipped.
What was I think, I like asking people this because everybody has their reasons for going that direction. What was the impetus? What flipped that switch for you that made you decide, homesteading's the thing? Was it frugality? Was it something else?
I think it was a mix of both. For us, it's definitely the self-reliance aspect of it, because by being more self-reliant, you are going to be spending less money. It kind of works in most cases. Sometimes it's not always the case, but a lot of times, especially when it comes to food, sourcing those sorts of things, like we really focus on berry trees, fruit production on our homesteads where we first started, because those were the one-time upfront costs. And then from there, you just sort of have to manage, maintain, and get them where they need to be. You might have to have additional costs, but they're not as heavy as bringing on animals and other livestock, those kinds of costs. That's why we started there. It was really about that food, having that source of food that would grow for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, sorry.
No, perennial systems are just so amazing because of that fact. Once you establish them, they're just the gift that keeps on giving. And, I just got turned on to a new mulberry I hadn't planted before. I planted it. It's going on its second year now. I got it in the chicken yard. And I got fruit off that thing this year.
Oh, wow.
I swear. Pakistan mulberry. Look into that.
We've heard of those.
Yeah, look into those if you like big, rich, sweet berries. Now, of course, they're gonna stain. Birds are gonna eat them, and they're gonna like crap everywhere and stain on stuff. But I mean, if you want berries to like make stuff with and eat, they're screaming. We put them on pancakes. We just like strip them off and just like that's the jam that goes on pancakes or whatever. And it's pretty prolific, and it's in its second year, and it produced quite a bit this year. So
we've been trying to grow mulberries since we've started, but the deer eat them.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah.
Every year. The trees have survived. They're alive.
Yeah, it's just they get the tops of them off, so they can't keep going up. So we've tried a few different things, but we're probably going to have to put, fence around them better.
Yeah. That's man, people. I don't have that much problem here. Not to say that I don't have problem here, but it's not like in some areas there's a lot more for them to come in for. There's plenty for them to eat elsewhere. There's an orchard next door, so they don't really need to come here to eat. So they tend to hang out in other areas. But yeah, that's like a big problem for a lot of people, is just trying to keep all the stuff from eating your stuff, right? Yeah. Hey, so I guess I would be remiss if I didn't ask how you guys came up with the name TheCannyCouple.
Yeah.
I don't think Aaron remembers this.
I don't. It's been such a while. So we actually started, thinking about doing something. Probably, was that before we got into homesteading?
That's right after.
Okay, right after. So we were trying to think of a name wise, and I do remember getting out the thesaurus and looking up things.
I was like, what about canny? Because canny it's sort of an older term that you hear. It's not something like modern or new. When you think of like a canny individual, it's not something you use in everyday language. Somebody who's wise, who's thoughtful, mindful. And the way we see it is we're very mindful with how we spend our money, how we live our life. We're also very simple. And although we're first generation and we're younger, we tend to be more like the little 70, 80-year-old couple that you see on the rocking chairs who go to bed when the sun goes down and get up when the sun comes up. It really does suit us because we are old souls in younger bodies.
Yeah.
Getting older every day.
Yeah. Where now you guys are in Virginia?
We are.
And what's like, how big's your homestead? What are you on, a few acres? You got a lot more than a few acres, or?
So homestead wise, we have a lot of wooded areas. So we have about 25 acres, but probably
8.
No, not that many. Probably 3 to 4 is not wooded areas. So our main homestead is on a 1.5 acre right now, but we have access we keep talking about, and we have planted some trees over in the other 2.5 ones, like walnut, some more black walnuts and hazelnuts, more nuts over in that section.
It's sort of split, like the roads have went through it with how they've developed the property. So a lot, I mean, it's mostly wooded from where our standpoint is, which we don't really have any intention of taking those out. And it's also very steep. That's something that, like, a lot of people would look at the property as deceptively steep. You don't realize it's like not straight up, but as you start to go up it or down it, you really start to realize just how steep and how hard it is to get things level.
Yes. For example, our garden. So
and it's still not level.
Right. So we wanted it as level as we could get it. So we actually hand dug out it to make it level. So we did this all by hand. So it was very hard work. It took us
about 3 months.
About 3 months to work through this, probably weekend wise. And we make sure it got level enough for our massive garden that we have.
It worked out pretty well for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, typically when folks get an idea, when a couple gets an idea, there's usually one person who's a little bit more excited about it than the other. So with respect to the whole homesteading idea, who were you guys equally excited, or was one had to kind of be more convinced than the other?
He loves fruit and berries. He could eat them every day, and anything to get more blueberries and berries onto the property. I can't foresee how much work this is for me on the back end when it comes to preserving and taking care of the fruits once they're off of it. It was definitely and even now he's learned to contain the excitement, I think. But even now he wants to be like, oh, let's try this new bush. And we're really trying to focus as part of our frugality aspect of, okay, do we know if we're going to like it? Like, we've never even had anything close to tasting like this. I don't really want to plant a 20, 30-year-long tree on the property we're not going to eat.
I'm bad about that. Anything new and unique that comes along, I'm like, ooh, I could probably find a spot for that one.
So that's his excitement.
Yeah. Let me ask you about how you came up with your location for your property. Was that something you spent a great deal of time when you settled upon it, or did you do a threats or needs analysis, or what was your reason?
This one was inherited land. So we built it into what we needed ourselves. If we had the choice, we would have probably been across the line on Tennessee side, not on the Virginia side, but where we're located, at least we can easily get to 4 different states beside our own with under 2 hours each where we're located. So we have the ability to go to other states. We have talked about, maybe having another piece of land available, in one of those other states, just from from a wood perspective, or a camping perspective, even
a business perspective.
Yeah.
If I wanted to do a greenhouse with propagation, it's very hard in Tennessee. They actually, or not Virginia. They, they bring people out onto your property, and that's really not what we're looking for. We don't like to have a lot of people go and inspect. There's a lot of rules, like very strict rules in Virginia that we have to be cautious with, even when it comes to aquaponic systems. Yeah. What fish you can have,
so now you're going to have to tell me a little bit more about this. This interests me. So, if you want to do something on your property, like put up a greenhouse,
like to sell. Like if I were going to sell plants,
Okay.
if I wanted
Yeah.
to like propagate for selling, which
Gotcha.
we talked about, because
Yeah.
this is something I've become very passionate about to help save money, because we have all these plants that are growing really well, and a lot of them are very easy to propagate. So instead of spending the money to buy more, I could propagate and grow from what we have. And not only that, it's hardy, it grows well in our soil, it grows well in our area, so it's got a better chance to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe I could even expand that, make that something I could bring extra money into the homestead. And Aaron started looking into it. He's like, yeah, they have to come out and do an inspection and all this other stuff. There's like so many rules for it.
Mm.
That's not really what we want. We don't want that intrusion. We like to live our life, like to be on our property and do what we want to do on our own property.
Yeah. So what I'm gathering is that there's a lot of regulatory
Yes.
hoops that you need to jump through living in Virginia. Is it not one of your freer states? Is that what I'm to understand?
Yes, they adopt a lot of your California laws. So you know how that is on a lot of that. So it varies from year to year. It goes in cycles because our state swings all the time back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the funny thing about that pendulum, though. It never swings back the other way all the way.
I know.
Never.
I know.
Right? It's always moving in one direction. It's just a little slower with one party than the next. And that's the unfortunate part about it. So, yeah, you guys have been big advocates of becoming debt-free. Is that something that you currently are working toward, or are you guys in a position where you can say, hey, we're debt-free?
We're not in a position to say we're debt-free, but we will be within a year.
Yes.
We aggressively, we're talking aggressively pay off debt. Probably 60 to 70% of our take-home income goes towards debt. And Aaron and I both work full-time jobs as well as do the homestead and everything else that we do.
Yeah, as well as all the extracurricular things we've got, from side hustles to content creation, etc. So we're extremely busy usually.
And but yeah, it's something we really focus on. It's became so important to us to be debt free. We have been debt free, and ever since we got together, I came into the relationship with a bit of debt from student loan debt, and Aaron could have turned away. He didn't, and we tackled it like immediately and just started really hustling to pay that off. And that was probably our longest debt payment. But we did get it paid off. We got paid off quickly. And then after that, everything else we've really worked toward. Anything we wanted and we've had to go into debt for, we've always had a plan to pay that debt off as quick as possible.
Yeah, and the debt we're in right now is because of a house remodel we went through to make our home more homestead and side hustle friendly.
Yeah, that is super smart. And that is something that is not taught in school.
No.
That is something that they don't talk about as far as from the standpoint of being free.
Yes.
They tell you that apple pie and hot dogs and being patriotic is what it means to be an American and be free. But they don't tell you about not becoming a slave to debt. And that's what so many people have found themselves to be, but that's what they encourage you to do, because that's how our system is designed for people to carry debt and spend money and keep money in the system.
Yeah.
And so
it's worse, even more, day to day now, it seems like, too. A lot of the stories I read,
Yeah. So what was the biggest step that you took to get yourself moving in that direction of debt free?
So I've always been naturally frugal. And kind of pushed Aaron toward. He probably had the bigger adjustment to make in not wanting to spend money. But I would say the biggest thing is budgeting. Like, we budget and allocate every single dollar. Where we had failed in our budget until more recently has been not having like a homestead project budget. We've always built the homestead into the budget, but we weren't really looking at like projects and really long-term thinking for those things. So that's where we noticed we had a big failure, a big hole in our budget. So we've actually built that into our budget as well. Padding every project. I'm a huge patter to the budget, too much. And we really try to allocate every single dollar and try to keep underneath each of the categories that we have. We don't do like the broad categories. We do break it out and do a list. And Aaron's very diligent about keeping up with this. He has an accounting background, so this is spreadsheet numbers, statistics, what he likes to see, likes to compare and see how we're doing. But I would say it's probably our biggest thing is budget. Like the budget, you have to be willing to make choices. And if you're going to take the frugality lifestyle and you are not used to that kind of a lifestyle, it isn't just like a switch, it flips. It's a mindset change. Every aspect of you is going to have to really kind of start shifting towards this, because a lot of people, I think, they're wanting to save money, but not change how they live currently. Let's save money and still go out to the movies and to all these places. Like, how to save money going to McDonald's. That's the mindset shift. You really have to actually look at this and say, okay, is this really what I want? Do I really want to be debt free? And the mindset has to shift. You have to say, okay, well, maybe I don't need to save money at McDonald's. I'll save money by not going to McDonald's. I'll save money by eating at home, which is better for you anyways.
Yeah, I think that's very sage advice, because having a plan, you're never going to get to where you want to be unless you actually commit to that plan. First start with the plan and then ultimately commit to it and be steadfast in your resolve. I think that's where a lot of people, fall down in that, is that they get like, ooh, shiny thing, ooh, I want that, or I want this, or they feel like they need to keep up with somebody around them. And it's just really I think it's just living within your means. And
it
is.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that they don't teach this at a much younger age, because what happens typically is kids wind up being raised in government school or the system, and then their parents are raised in that system, and they don't know any better either. And so they just keep perpetuating this cycle on the hamster wheel of continual debt. And that's really what they want. I'm referring to they as those who are the people behind the scenes pulling the strings. They need people to be in debt. So it's unfortunate they don't teach this, because if they did, and I think we'd probably have a lot more people in a much more responsible position in life. So I think your advice is really good advice.
Yeah, and you see a lot of homestead groups now, are teaching this more, because of how important it is, to not be in debt so much.
Learn how to manage your money and be mindful with your money. And I feel like a lot of people look at the world and you're not taught this, and they just like, well, if you want it, you're gonna have to work and you go get it, or put it on a credit card and you could pay off the credit card when you could afford to pay it off. And it's really a never-ending cycle, and it is a cycle where you have lost control of your life. You no longer control not just your money, but your life, because money, unfortunately, is needed for life. So you really lost control, and that's something we do not like losing. We like that control.
Right. Yeah, it's a really good feeling, when you don't have all that debt. I think a lot of people get accustomed to it. They just, they live their life that way, and it kind of feels normal. They don't like it, but that's what they know. But when you alleviate that debt, when you get that debt out from underneath you, and you don't have a mortgage, you don't have car payments, you don't have all of those things that are the majority of what people hold in debt. You don't have a bunch of stuff on plastic. It just frees you up to be a lot more flexible when it comes time to an increase in goods and services, because you have more disposable income to put toward those things, and it's not as painful for you. But if you're living month to month because you're just making it, because you've got all this debt, you're not free. You're a slave.
You are. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing that I just wish that this would be taught. But again, there's a reason why it's not taught, because that's how our system is designed. Yeah, I want to take a quick moment to say hey to some folks in the chat. Skanes Girl, how are you? My Crooked Little Homestead, Lucy, good evening. And Chuck Peoples in the house. How you doing, man? Good to see you, dude. And also, if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the chat. So we were talking about this debt issue, and I think it's something that a lot of people deal with. What's the best advice that you could give to someone who has what seems to be an insurmountable amount of debt? Let's say it's a college student who's got a $100,000, $200,000 college bill that they're on the hook for, or it's somebody else who has an extreme amount of debt. What best advice would you give them?
You live below your means, first off. Most of these people are trying to live above their means and just forgetting a lot of their debt, thinking somebody else will pay for it, but there's reasons you get into that type of debt, with us though. I mean, our degrees, we're not using any of our degrees we got, of course, so it's being more strategic about how you go about everything.
It is. And if you're in a situation where you're trying to get out of the hole, I would say, like, the number one thing you need to do is you need to sit back and breathe. Just breathe and look at your budget. Look at what you bring in, what you need to pay, how much extra you have. Now, see if what you need to pay can be cut. Pennies make dollars, and dollars add up. You might not see huge amount of savings initially. You might just see like $15, $20 here, but every little extra you could put towards your debt, you're going to feel a little bit better, because it's going to give you momentum. The more you do a little bit, it's going to grow. It's that feeling that's going to grow. You're going to feel like you're not getting anywhere, even if you build it up to make one big payment. That's fine too. Whatever's going to make you get that good feeling, you're making progress. But always work towards progress. If you have to move to somewhere that's a little bit more cost effective, it might be an option or might not be an option. It just look at every option that you can. We were in a situation where we didn't have a home debt. We had my student loan debt. We had a vehicle debt. We got it paid off. We took on another vehicle debt. We got it paid off. And then anything else that we've wanted, we've went into it with our eyes wide open. We know what we're doing, and we've really focused on paying off the debt, because we have always lived well below our means. That's just our natural lifestyle. That's why going into this frugality lifestyle, it was there already for us. We weren't the people who go out to concerts and parties and go to the bar. Like, I've never been to a bar ever. I wouldn't even know where to go to get into one. It's not the lifestyle we lived. And if those things are important to you, you need to make sure they're built into your budget. Yep. So you're still saving money. And you also, if you can, put money aside for a rainy day. You never know when your vehicle's going to fall apart. You're going to need, everybody says 1,000. I would actually say 5,000. I would have just had $1,000 emergency fund when I moved in with Aaron, we would have been in a mess. We had in like 3 months, we had $10,000 worth of stuff happen. We had air conditioner unit go out. We had to get a lawnmower, and my vehicle had to have the whole oil pan replaced and chrome work done. So everything fell apart within 3 months. So
Yeah.
You just have to really look and figure things out.
Yeah, you guys both have degrees, but you're not using those degrees now because you've changed your focus, correct? Or are you using them?
No. I mean, not really. We just got into different things from what they were for.
I sort of fell into my career. What my degree taught me was detail work, analytical work, and I sort of fell into my job as they needed somebody detail oriented, somebody who could learn systems and processes, and that's what I'm really good at. Aaron kind of fell into his as well as he was working through.
But this isn't our goal per se. Our goal is to be retired early, extremely early. So we are looking from the frugality standpoint and the homestead sustaining us with our side hustles afterwards.
Yeah, right on. Are you guys full-time homesteaders now? Or are you working outside of the home at all?
So I work from home. We both, and Aaron does for the most part too. So we do kind of both. So, and the baby is not in like a daycare. We, take care of her. I'm very fortunate. My job's very flexible. I'm able to do what needs to be done and take care of that management.
And homestead is, early mornings, late evenings, making sure everything gets done in those time frames. So it's usually, at least it's the cooler part of the days than anything anyway. Usually when we do work, we do try not to, do the hot part of the days anyway. So
we put processes in place. So we try to let everything kind of run if it needs to run. But for the most part, we really try to be hands off. Just try to let, set the homestead up so it's going to kind of run its course and do what it needs to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Skane's girl says that her dad always told her, if you watch your pennies, the big money will take care of itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I was talking with a guy years ago. We were on the fire line and we were just kicking back. It was in the evening. And we're looking up at the stars, and he was saying, "Yeah, I'm going to be retiring next year." And I said, "Wow, Mick, you're not even maxed out." I'm thinking retirement pension, right? And I said, "You're not even maxed out, dude. Like, can you go out?" I say, "What percent are you at?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm at like 60% of, is what he's going to get is 60% of what his current salary is." And typically, people work till they get closer to that 90 or, whatever ratio they're going to get. And he's like, "Oh yeah, man, I could have punched out a long time ago." He says, "My house is paid off. I don't have car payment. I don't have this. I've got, he says, I'm living well underneath my means right now." He says, "I've been super frugal from day one." And I just was sitting there just kind of looking up at the stars going, "Man, that's awesome, dude." And that's the way a lot of people don't think. They don't think about reaching that goal, because I know for myself, when you're young, when you start out and you're 18 doing something, you look at retirement as like, man, I don't even know if I'm going to make it that far. That's like a long time away. And the next thing you know, you're like, man, I'm like 3 years from retirement or whatever. I'm at this age now. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, Skane's girl, your dad's a wise cat. Let's just say he knows what's up. And a lot of older dudes do know what's up. So, yeah, frugality. What are your best frugality tips? I had someone on a little bit ago, and she was sharing some of her frugality tips, and I'm always interested in learning ways in saving money. And what are some of your better frugality tips? What would be your top 3 or top 5 or whatever?
I would say my top number 1 is going to be meal prep. That is the thing that probably, we view time as money also, because my time is money. My time is valuable. I've got to expend it to the best absolute place I can. We have always, I come from a large family, so I don't know how to make meals for 2 people or 3 people. I know how to make meals for 10 people. And it was always really hard when we first started. I'd make this massive meal and then have plans to make another massive meal the next day. So we started meal prep, and I would even take a step further, actually put it into a container for your next meal for meal prep. Meal prep is eating leftovers if you can, without food fatigue. If it tastes good, you shouldn't get food fatigue, but I know some people do. But I would say it's a really big thing. And then I would say the second thing, it really applies, apply the thought of frugality to every aspect of your life. And that is like, and this is an example I'm going to give, when it comes to the baby Isabel. We've really looked at her life, and when we've gotten things for her, we didn't get with like one purpose in mind, because babies are expensive, or can be expensive, but they don't have to be. So like car seats. I had to get a new car seat. Well, I'm going to get the car seat that's going to grow with her till she's 100 pounds. Or the bathtub that goes from infant to 8 months. Don't buy the one-use item you can only use for 2 months if you have to purchase an item. Really be thoughtful and apply this to every aspect of your life. Don't buy one-purpose items if you can help it. Multiple purpose items that you can use in multiple ways, in different ways.
And another one I would say is from your shopping. There's many ways to only shop sales, only shop clearances. Making sure you're using any kind of coupons, rebates, anything to get back and save that money as well. Because that's something we do. And honestly, like if we get any kind of rebate back, like we use some of these receipt apps, take pictures of your receipts. We use that money usually on like an Amazon gift card or something that we'll use for the homestead.
Or the side hustles. We'll use it somewhere. Like to purchase the camera we're using. We had the cash built up from the receipt app. We were able to purchase that camera and only spend like $20 for a camera and multiple lights. And that really helped us save some money there. So we were really thoughtful, mindful with how we were spending the money.
Yeah. We're always very, so for example, we don't spend $1 without talking to each other.
$1, like any dollar.
So we always discuss, what it is, what we're going to buy, see, what the uses for that is, and make sure it's a valid purchase, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I think that in a relationship, you need to have that level of cooperation. You need to have both people on the same page, especially if your finances are joint. Yes. Some relationships, they keep their bank accounts separate. I personally don't know how that works. It works for some people, but it certainly doesn't work in my circumstance.
Yeah.
It would be very cloudy, but it would be very weird for me. But
like I know a friend that he's got, they do joint and 2 separate. So just I don't understand, and then how the bills work. He was trying to explain. It's like, do what now? This makes no sense,
We view it as being a unit. And I can say, since Aaron and I have been together, we've not had an argument. We might bicker occasionally, but we try to catch it on the front end. But we've never argued, and we've never argued about money. And that's always like the one big stressor in relationships you hear about. I remember we were doing an interview with a pastor, and he was like, no, you're going to argue. You're going to argue. We're going to get down to the dirt of it. Like, you don't know everything. I'm like, we've talked every single thing about finances you could possibly think about. We go through every scenario. We even talk about scenarios that are never going to happen, because our finances, we want to be debt free. It's an important aspect. We need to make sure we're working towards that goal. And it just was one of those sorts of times where you're just like, okay,
Yeah.
we're not that kind of a person. But I would definitely say frugality tips is, there are ways to cut costs. You have to find them. A lot of them will be area specific.
That is true.
That is a big thing, because you see a lot of people get smoking deals at thrift stores on clothes and things like that. You won't find that here. Like, it's cheaper for me to go buy them brand new than it is to go buy them at a Goodwill or a Salvation Army in our area, or even some yard sales, because they can be just expensive because of the area we live in. But you need to know your area. You need to kind of understand where you live and how money sort of flows and works in your, and I don't know if that really makes sense, but kind of understand how your area works and how you save the most money. Don't just assume buying used is going to be the better price.
A lot of times it's not.
It depends. Oh, for us, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times you can look up the used will be more expensive than the new.
Yeah. The key to that is knowing what the value of something is before you just say, oh, it's used or whatever, or I'm getting a fun, a large size of something. And, if you're not looking at the cents per ounce, the cost per ounce, when you're looking at your foodstuffs that you may be buying in a store, that's where I think a lot of people, they just look at the price, or they look like, oh, it's on sale, and they grab it, and they don't look at the counts, the cost per ounce.
Well, and I would say, when you talk about that, to get creative and like look at places like Azure Standard and places like that. Because I know for us, Azure Standard, we buy a lot of our bulk, like oatmeal. We go through a lot of oatmeal. They are the best price per pound if you're buying bulk oatmeal. Like, you can't beat it. I mean, you just cannot beat the price there.
Yeah. There was I mentioned this on one of the other broadcasts that I did, because we were talking about frugality, and it's one of the things that kind of inspired me many years ago. And it was a book written by a lady. Her name's Amy Decision, and she's from, I don't know, someplace back kind of on your coast, I believe, kind of in the New England area. And I was just inspired by her ability to save money. And she put out this book called the Tightwad Gazette. And if you haven't checked that out, you might want to grab a copy of it or something and just see. I mean, some of her things are very, very extreme, but if you're looking at every dollar, then there's a lot of tips in there that may, apply, or may, you might find value in. But so that was something that years and years ago, I was just like, oh, we're doing this. And then we did it for a while, but it takes so much discipline and so much work and so much commitment that it's just hard to do, but if you are committed and you stick to it, she's living proof that she was able to quit her job. She was able to get out of the corporate world or whatever she was doing. And basically they sold their place, bought this amazing farmhouse on property with a huge barn, and became homesteaders. And that was her full-time job, was going around to yard sales and to thrifting and to doing all this stuff and repurposing all of the things that she had bought for their 6 or 7 children, and all of that stuff got worn by all of the kids. Right. Yeah. So it's just how things used to be done out of necessity, but it's just so interesting how things in society, we've changed to just now like, oh, we'll just buy another one of those, throw that away or give that away, and we'll buy something new because this is the latest, coolest thing. And I just think that's lame, to be quite honest, because all you're doing is you're fitting into the mold of what society wants you to be.
Yes.
They're selling you all this crap through marketing, and you're opening your mouth and the hook is set deep. If that's what you want to do with your money, then cool. It's not my say, but I just think I'm inspired when I see people who are committed to saving money and doing things kind of in an older school way. So very cool. Good on you guys.
Say, like the one thing that will help, like if you're overwhelmed with the frugality aspect, is actually do it in baby steps to build a habit and figure out like how long it takes you to build a habit. For me, it takes me closer to like 45 days to build a true blue habit. And if I fall out of it, I'm out of it. So, and that's just sort of how I kind of tend to do things. So if I'm taking and changing my entire lifestyle, I'll never remember it all. I'm just never going to remember every single little step that needs to be done with everything else I have to do in a day. But if I take 2 items out of that tip and make those changes, and I've saved that money, okay, I'm going to take 2 more items and I'm going to add another layer to my money savings, then another layer. And then you're going to build this beautiful cake of being debt free.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that's, most people, they look at stuff and they're like, oh, I want to have that, or I want to be like that, or whatever. And they don't realize that it's taken a while to get that for most people. And they need to take those baby steps and to chip away at a little bit of it at a time. And, over the course of time, things are going to accumulate. And so, yeah, that's really good advice. Scanes Girl says she's picking up her first Azure order tomorrow. So that's interesting because I've heard of Azure Standard, and it was brought up, I think, at one of my lives a couple of weeks ago. I think I was talking to Katie from Homesteading RD, and she had mentioned something, I believe, about Azure Standard. So I don't know if that's the latest and greatest thing right now, or that's just where people are going to save money. But talk a little bit more about that, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, if nothing else, it's a great place to meet other homesteaders, other
homeschooling families.
I don't know how many homeschooling families I've seen that. So what they do is, instead of, you can get it shipped to your house, but it's not cost effective. Like, they basically bring in a tractor and trailer into a certain location, and everybody goes and unloads it. And you get your stuff there. So it's basically like the store coming to you.
Huh.
And we've really used it for, and this is where you get the things you eat. Like, we really focus on getting the food that you eat, and knowing your prices in your area. Oatmeal, if you get oatmeal from there, the real oatmeal, you'll never get it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it's much cheaper. And it tastes so much better. We've gotten grains there. They have a really good price on whole grains, hard wheat. Their hard red wheat's a good price. Their sugar, you can get a bulk order of their organic pure sugar. That's a really good deal there as well. So we look at it from a perspective of what we need on our homestead, what we need in our homestead kitchen, my kitchen, and get those items there. They've also started doing canning jars. They're larger jars. If you store in jars,
gallons.
They're actually a decent price. It's not near as expensive as going and getting balls or something like that, if that's something, because it's really hard to find large.
Gallons,
at least in our area, it's very hard to find gallon jars. So I've been trying to slowly buy them, because it's how I want to kind of have my pantry. I like the jars better for ease of use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I've been talking a lot about saving money and kind of how that builds some self-reliance into our lives. And along with self-reliance, in this community is freedom. I think that's what homesteaders like, right? We want to be freedom. We want freedom in our lives, I think, but it's really kind of a personal evaluation of your own circumstance, freedom. And everybody views freedom a little bit differently. So based on that, how do you guys view freedom? What is freedom to you?
I would say, for me, I'll let you talk a minute. Me would be debt-free and out of the corporate world.
And out of the corporate world, you said?
Yes. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
For me personally, it's being debt free and being, being our own bosses, not being reliant on anything. Like, we are very fortunate. We are in a good position in life, but we're still very dependent. So we want to cut back as many of those dependencies as possible. And however we can. And like we say in our podcast, it's really, we focus on cutting even a 0.001% a day, just trying to take a step in that direction of being more self-reliant, because we've cut back a lot and we are continuing to cut back a lot on our dependencies, and we'll never get 100%. But our goal is to cut it back as absolutely much as we can to get as dependent as we can, and that's freedom for me. Every little inch we make, every little piece of that rope we pull back onto ourselves, that is freedom.
Yeah. What do you view as the biggest obstruction to getting there?
Society. I do. We live in a world today, we get looked at like we're crazy. Like, we do. Like,
Family members, even
family members, they're like, why do you want to live like this? There's reasons that the world has modernized. Why do you want to live like this? Why would you want to raise your child like this? Like, I remember not having a cell phone when I was a kid. Why do you want kids having cell phones? Why do kids need cell phones? Why do babies need cell phones when they're not leaving their parents' home? Like, why is this world built around all this craziness instead of just simply going outside and playing and having this simple lifestyle? What is wrong with that? That's really what we kind of look at, because we do get the looks. We get the looks like we're insane and we've lost our mind. It's nothing for me to get asked, why are you living like this?
Now, the community that you guys live in, is it a community that supports or I guess embraces the lifestyle that you guys choose to live, or they kind of look at you like you're some kind of an outlier?
It's mostly a dying area here. Most of the people in this area were older generations, ones that were around, during World War II, Great Depression times. And most of those are gone now. There's a lot of empty houses and land around in this area now. And there is a few people that's moved out from, bigger towns, but it doesn't seem like they're going into the homesteading ways. It seems like they were just escaping the city life, but it's not a big homesteading area here right now. But I mean, a lot of it has to do with there's no flat land either,
it's a mountain.
I mean, if you're a homesteader looking, you're going to want flat land, if it's your first thing,
And it's in Virginia. Most of the time they're going to go towards the Tennessee side.
Yes.
Or, I don't even know, Kentucky
maybe some, yeah.
But they're not looking in this area. Everybody's wanting out of this area. They're wanting to go more towards the towns, be more cityfied. We're a bit more behind, I guess you would say. Trends tend to take a lot of time in our area to catch on.
Yes.
You saw a lot of homesteading 60 years ago, 70 years ago, and now all of those kids don't want any part of it. Like my mom, she didn't want any part of that lifestyle. So she would much prefer to, and that's fine. That's her decision to make, but you don't see a lot of people trying. Like we did have a family member who tried. It didn't work out.
Lasted like
a year or two.
A year total.
Yeah, it didn't work out. It was too much at once. They jumped in it way too fast.
Yes.
Too much at once with a lot of children, and that it's okay. Whereas we learn early that we were doing too much at once, and we've got to pull back some and go a little bit slower into these items to make sure we're doing it right.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. You know, I find the idea that, you know, there's obstructions to our freedom in the land of the free, right? And I'm throwing up the finger quotes again for those in the audio. But it's really where we're headed. And I think it's incumbent upon anybody who's looking to remain as free as they possibly can to try to do what you can do at this point in time, because pretty soon it's just, we talked about that pendulum earlier, right? And it's always going to keep moving in one direction.
Yeah.
And regardless of who's in power, regardless of who's, you know, what party is you vote for or whatever, that's not what's going to give you your freedom. And so it's incumbent upon anybody who's interested in their freedom to find ways in which they can build that into their own lives, because no politician's going to do that for you.
No.
Yeah. So very interesting. Hey, so you guys, what other livestock are you guys raising on your property? What do you guys got?
So
we don't have anything yet. We are working on getting chickens. We were very selective.
yes,
We wanted American breast chickens. We have a local person actually who has them. They raise them. They hatch them. So that's what we wanted, but we're on back order on stock for those. So that is our first lane stock.
yeah, and then we are working on this winter setting up our duck pond area for ducks as well.
In a meat bird area.
Yes, and a meat bird area for the American breast. So I prefer poultry most of the time over other things. So we are definitely venturing more to ducks and chickens and probably some turkeys in another 4 or 5 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we're applying that frugal mindset to our homestead. We've talked about goats. I wanted goats. We talked about goats. We talked about pigs. We've talked about a miniature Jersey cow. And then we really looked at it. We're like, does this really make sense? Like, Aaron doesn't really like, he doesn't eat much of that meat. I do. Aaron does not. But we like poultry. Why don't we lean towards the poultry? It makes much more sense for us to go that route versus going the route of all. And that was one of the things that we struggled with. I mean, it was constant back and forth, coming up with the different, writing out pros and cons lists over and over and over again, and really hashing this out. And when we looked at it from a really, mindful approach and looked at it from a frugality approach, it did not make sense for us to go with something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Beware of the goat. That's what I will tell you.
It's not on the list anymore.
Well, the only reason I want it is so it eats some of the poison ivy.
Yeah. I mean, unless you got something that you want them to clear out, as far as eating, and you can keep them confined in that area, then they'd be pretty useful in that sense. But man, they are a pain in the ass, those goats. So, yeah, I think most people that wind up getting them, for the most part, they're like, yeah, that was not what I wanted. I mean, some people love raising goats and they have them or whatever, but yeah, I just ask people to maybe consider that strongly, just for those reasons, because if you are trying to grow anything and you've got a garden and you've got plants, you don't want them just completely decimating. You better make sure you keep them up, or they will be in there making your day like not a happy one.
Yeah.
So
we're so glad we didn't jump into it, because we could have. And we would have jumped into goats. Like, that was the 5-year plan, was to have goats, and it just didn't happen because we struggled with the garden and other items on the homestead. And I'm so thankful that we had that little bit of a mishap.
Yeah, no doubt. So you guys are raising mushrooms and microgreens and doing things like that on your farm?
Yes. So mushroom wise, it's something I guess it was during when we were watching stuff with the baby.
No, it was right before. It was 2019.
So it was 2019. Okay, right before that, we started taking some random classes we saw online, and was like, oh, let's take this, and was like, oh, this is interesting. So we got into the mushroom thing, and this is one of our side hustles that we're working on building up as well, is selling oysters, lion's mane, maybe a couple of other varieties, but we'll have a section in our woods that we're going to be working on for shiitakes as well. So those are things that it's easy to sell because there's not as much competition in the area here currently. I know some areas are oversaturated in those type of things right now, but for us, the local farmers market, or if we go just drop off locations, is not hasn't been oversaturated yet.
Is you got to jump through a bunch of hoops to sell all that stuff?
Honestly, not. So you would think that with some of the things we talked about Virginia too, but not with the mushroom ones, because they never decided how to put laws on those. So with them, it's very easy to get into just basically your, some commercial seller's license, and you don't have to have a commercial kitchen with those as well either.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, most foodstuffs, at least in my state, require some kind of a law, cottage food law or whatever. And I've looked into it, but it isn't anything that I necessarily want to try to meet the regulatory demands. So I was just interested if that was something that you had to deal with there as well. What about the microgreens? You guys selling those currently?
Not currently. Due to the house remodel, it sort of put a pause on some of the stuff because we had to box everything up, and we're still unboxing some of those. But our goal is to focus more heavily on the mushrooms and just have, a few microgreens on the side, either, if they want a small portion, but mostly it's going to be, maybe something we can easily grow to feed chickens, feed our poultry, something, we can have on the side as well for the microgreens.
Which is more lucrative, growing mushrooms or microgreens? The
mushrooms.
Mushrooms?
Yeah. The mushrooms per pound.
Yeah. Anywhere from usually 10 to 20 per pound.
Yeah. And so from a time perspective,
oysters are fast. The oysters can produce like within 3 to 4 weeks. You can get your first flushes. Shiitakes, it's years. That's more like something we would have for us if we decided to produce enough for other means. And those are much more expensive. The lion's mane was like 6 months, I think.
Or 5. I think it's like 4 months or
4 months. So they take a little longer, but you get a bigger flush of the mushroom. But definitely oysters are they are knockout quick.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Are you guys off grid at all?
We're working on it. That's Aaron's big project right
now. We're trying to get away from the electric company as much as possible, from all the rate increases to
power's going
constantly power outage. So with us, it's nothing to lose power probably every other week for a portion of time. It's because they don't maintain the lines around here is what it is. So I have a small system right now that just got in within the last month that working on setting up right now.
Yeah, and you're looking to do that for your entire residence eventually?
That is the goal.
That's the goal. We're working on a few select items right now. Aaron, he asked me, he said, what are the top things you want to be able to run off solar? And I said, my freezer and refrigerator. And I came back with water, the water pump. I would love to be able to run the water pump. That kind of changed our system a bit. It made it a little bit more expensive because to run the water pump,
we had to have the 240.
he had to have a bigger system, but it was a good adjustment for us because we might not need to run the water pump for very long, but if we did need to run it, we could flip a switch to be able to do that.
Yeah, those are like big ticket items, and I think a lot of people don't think about that because of the convenience that we find ourselves with modern amenities, right? We just flip the switch on the wall and, it comes through the lines that are, coming off the road or whatever. And so to be completely self-sufficient and off grid is again, a very empowering type of a thing. And it's been one of my goals is to get the ability to store my own energy. I do have solar here at the house, but it's grid tied. And I don't like the fact that when they decide to shut power off or whatever, they can just shut it off.
Yeah, we're going with just like manual switch right now, for the first part so that I can run certain items off of that. So it's, sort of not grid tied because then it goes through your manual switch that way. So that's my way of getting those main items off of it for now. And then later on, building a better backup system for all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a huge, huge goal of mine. And the other's just water redundancy, having the ability to have water and be able to deliver that when power goes out. So I'm still working on my secondary system, trying to come up with some very simple solution for being able to deliver water out of my tank that I established earlier this year. So that's a big one. Water and energy is kind of often overlooked because it's so readily available for most,
Right. Yeah. And for us, we've got a well that's down like 300 feet where we're at. So, and which is really good because everybody around us is like 600 feet. So, so for us, having something to have water without having to, trek up and down the mountains, in the wintertime, especially when the power goes out, we are allowed to have rain catchment systems here in Virginia. So we do have some of that as well.
You're allowed. They allow that.
They allow that.
They allow yes. It's not disallowed. It was something we actually had to look up beforehand. We're like Aaron's so careful.
Yeah, some states don't allow it.
Right. If you're like in a rural environment, and this is just something that
people wouldn't notice.
Yeah. And that's also too, it's one of those things where you might want to like maintain and establish good relations with your neighbors, because if your neighbors aren't going to be picking up the phone and calling the authorities for the things that you're doing, if it doesn't impact them, like storing water on your own property, that's the problem, is that we've got people who are willing to pick up the phone and call and notify the authorities, because the authorities don't really know unless they're looking at it through Google Earth or something like that. And that's a technology that's on the way. They're using that to look at your improvements on your property. Oh, that building wasn't there. We need to go out and look at that, right? All of those sorts of things are taking place as we move forward. So, what concerns you most about the things you're focused on and what you've heard, happening in the world and locally? What concerns you most about the future?
I would say inflation and the economy is. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say about the same. We were and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. We're so money focused, and because we are like in debt paying off zone right now, and not spend as much as possible. That is a huge focus for us, because I know everything is saying the economy is getting better. I don't know if these people that are writing these articles are actually going to the grocery store for themselves or doing things for themselves, because when we have to go someplace, I don't see things getting better.
Right. Historically, inflation has been an issue that has ebbed and flowed. And interest rates have ebbed and flowed. That's how they manage the money, and that's how they influence the markets and the monetary system. But the one thing that's different now that's very concerning is just the amount of deficit, the amount of debt that continues to climb. And it blows me away that somebody doesn't put that up, that's running for office, for instance, right? And just say, look at this. What do you want to do about that? Look at that. I intend on doing something about it. The problem is that the system, from what I've been able to determine, is so committed to the deep state. The deep state is running things. So I don't know if a person like that would have much sway. I don't know if they would have much love politically. So it's just interesting to see, how debt has spiraled out of control. And that's the one thing that really gives me a lot of cause for concern, is that there's no desire from anybody to try to make that right, to try to make that go away. So what's going to happen, in my opinion, I'm not an expert at this by any stretch, but I don't think it takes a genius to understand that when debt gets to the point where the system collapses, there's going to be a restructuring. There's going to be a change in how the monetary system is agreed that we move forward. So I think that's coming in the future. When it happens, if it's going to happen next year, or it's going to happen in the next 5 years, or, it'll happen after I'm dead, I don't know. But rest assured, it's going to happen, because they have no intention on making it right. They have no intention on wiping that away. And that's the one thing that both political parties can always agree on, is to spend more goddamn money.
Yep.
Always.
Right. That's the thing that, like, they just miraculously passed this bill on Friday night, right, leading up to a holiday, that it was unanimous, and they all wanted to go back to their own districts, and enjoy Thanksgiving. But there's this new omnibus bill. Who's going to pay for that? So that's what concerns me, and apologize for that rant, but
well, I have a question. Do you feel that it correlates with how debt is viewed in the minds of Americans as well? Because nobody really looks at the nation's debt, and people build up debt every single day, more and more and more. So our American mindset is that debt is normal. It's a part of life. It is every day. Our government even has so much debt. I mean, I feel like there's such a correlation between the two.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that, again, we've been told to go out and to accrue this debt. You need to establish a line of credit in order to be worthy of purchasing a car or a house or something like that. And that's the direction that they've pushed people's minds into, coupled with very effective marketing of, oh, you need the new iPhone 14. You need this one. This one's better than the one that you have that works completely fine. So it's a combination of all of those things. And it's I don't know. I don't certainly have the answer to it, but George Bush Jr. And I don't know, you guys may recall, but it was back when the Twin Towers were taken down. And that's one of the first things that he had basically kind of come out and said. You guys go out and spend money.
Yep. I remember that.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Go out and buy something. Spend, man. We need to get this economy going again. We need people to right? I mean, that's the message of the government, is to go out and just spend more money and keep things moving. So I don't know. It's just our system, I guess. But it's, again, good on you guys for recognizing to break out of that paradigm and to be responsible and to go a different way. So awesome. Are you guys going to be making any appearances anywhere? Are you going to any festivals? I think I kind of asked you a little bit about that earlier, but what's your thoughts on that?
Nothing we really have planned at the moment. It keeps coming up, you know. I know every year we talk about the Self-Reliance Festival, but we haven't made it out
here. Yet. Aaron, we're really gonna have to send him until Isabel. It's a little bit bigger. It's really not feasible for both of us to go. And he's
or Kentucky Sustainable Living's one in Bowling Green. You know, both of those are about the same distance from us, but. Besides that, just some local things. Like I know we have this thing coming up in August here. I'm going to, like, in our area. It's like a creator con thing where other creators, you know, get together and talk about, you know, how to do podcasts and YouTube, you know, better. And it's actually being sponsored by one of the colleges in the area too. So it's really cheap to attend as well. So I thought I'd give it a try. Might not be a good one though, you know, for our type of lifestyle and content.
He's going to stand out.
Right. Yeah, I will just say this, that I think there's really no substitute for going and actually meeting people in person. And I would encourage that if you're looking to network and to establish relationship or business or do that then in real life. And, you know, the conversations that we can have on the internet, you know, that's fine and all. And that's cool, but it's better to be in a room with somebody or to see them face to face and actually sit down, have dinner with them and establish, you know, those sorts of relationships. So that's one of the things that I would encourage people to do if they're considering, you know, being a part of a community, because I really think that it's important to make like connections and network with people more now than really ever, because we are so disconnected, but yet we're connected, right? Again, with the finger quotes, we're connected on the internet, but that's not a valid substitute for actually meeting people in real life. So I would encourage folks that are listening to maybe make the effort to go and meet people. I'm going to actually be in October. Kentucky Sustainable Living is actually having a fest that they're putting on this year for the first time. So it's their inaugural event. And it looks to me like it's going to be a pretty well done, you know, event. I like the location of it. And I like a lot of the speakers and folks that they're going to have there. They've got a lot of good things that they're going to be putting on, different classes and different workshops and things like that, processing chickens and processing a pig. And, you know, they're going to have a lot of vendors there and stuff. And I'm actually going to be teaching a class on the Friday before. So that's going to be on the 26th. And the festival is the 27th through the 28th. But I'll be teaching a class that's a planting a fruit tree. It's a gilding fruit trees. And, you know, I'll be sharing ideas on growing soil and establishing a food forest and some other permaculture tactics. But we're going to spend probably about 4 hours in the morning talking about all of those sort of things. And then your cost of admission will basically be covered. The lunch will be covered by your ticket. And then in the afternoon, we're going to get an opportunity to go out to a site that was established as a food forest last year. So you get to see the progression of how well it's doing. And we're going to put in a few more fruit tree guilds out there. So you'll get a lot of hands-on. And I'm looking forward to it because it'll be a smaller group of folks. The class is limited to 30 people. So whether we get 30 or not, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's going to be 30 or less. And I'll have the opportunity to work kind of one-on-one with people and get, questions answered, hopefully, that they may have. And I'm looking forward to that. So if you guys are going to be making your way at one of these festivals, I'd love to see you either there or some other place. I have put a link to that in the show notes. So there's a link to Kentucky Sustainable Living. That particular festival goes right to their website. And then I've put all of your links there as well in the show notes. So you guys do a podcast, right?
We do a podcast twice a week on Fridays and Tuesdays, and then we try to put out a YouTube on Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I first came into you guys from freesteading. So
it's a great place. Freesteading is.
Yeah, it's an awesome platform. A lot of good people over there, and I just want to thank you guys for coming on tonight and joining me to have a conversation. I think it's been pretty fruitful. Is there anything else you'd like to, I guess, mention now that we're getting kind of down to the end? You have any closing words or words of encouragement you'd like to leave folks with?
I mean, I would just say frugality isn't about giving up on life. It's about being mindful. And while we do live, we have a saying that we say with every podcast, with every video, it's work hard, live simple, and enjoy life. That's the lifestyle we have chosen. That's the lifestyle we enjoy living. But it's a mindset, and it's just really being mindful with how you spend your money. And you can apply it to every aspect of your life, including your homestead. And, even applying that mindfulness aspect to your homestead, being mindful of how you put systems into place, how you set your homestead up, what's important for your homestead. I feel like it just rolls into everything.
Totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you don't have anything, Aaron, I'll like you guys to maybe stick around just for a moment after we sign off. But are we good?
Yep.
Thank you.
Right on. Well, thanks everybody for being in the chat tonight and showing up. And remember, you can catch this on the audio platform on either Spotify, Audible, Google. So go over to that if you want to catch the audio version of this, and go out and be better tomorrow than you were today. Thanks for joining us, y'all.